Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another great fantasy baseball video. Today we're going to be doing my third base rankings, as you can see, and this rounds out all of the infield for me, and this will actually round out all of my rankings, because I don't think I'm going to rank the outfield or starting pitcher, because they're just such deep rankings that you're going to be able to find, guys. I may do like a sleepers slash busts episode for both positions, but at this point I don't think I'm going to be ranking them at all. I think I may just do some mock drafts, things of that nature, for the rest of these fantasy slots, as well as some fantasy baseball updates in my fan league. You guys should go check out that video. I'm going to be hosting a fan league. I'll put a link to that video in the description, as well as an annotation on the screen. If you would like to be part of my fan league, leave a comment down below, and then just PM me an email so I can add you to the fan league. So third base rankings, let's get right into it. So my rankings, I didn't just factor in my projections for them, I factored in projections as well as risk. And that's how I spit out these projections, because there's some guys, especially down here, that just come with an insane amount of risk, and you have to really factor that in when projecting these guys and doing rankings. So the top guy, Josh Donaldson, he moves from the Coliseum to Rogers Center in Toronto, Canada, so that is only going to improve his numbers. So I have him projected for 268, 35 home runs, 110 RBIs, 7 stolen bases, and 100 runs. He could easily do the 110 RBI and 100 runs, moving to such a great lineup. The 35 home runs should be easily attainable, playing in a much better power park. And the average, he isn't that 300 hitter that we saw in 2013. He's not the 240, 250 hitter that we saw last year. He's somewhere right in the middle, and I think he's going to hit just a hair below 270. So we go to the number 2 guy, Anthony Rendon, and you could call him safe. He looks pretty safe, but it is only the one season that we have on Rendon, but he looked pretty good. So a 292 average, 18 home runs, 80 RBIs, 20 stolen bases, 110 runs is a pretty decent projection for him. The reason I have him at number 2 is because he doesn't come with the same power potential that Josh Donaldson has, but he does come with the insane steals potential. Well, insane for a third baseman steals potential. And I just realized that I have some really bad mixed up numbers here for Kyle Seager. I'm going to fix those really quick. So he comes with the steals potential for a third baseman, which is huge, because if you don't have to get steals from second base or short and you can get them for third base, that allows you to take a Javier Baez or something like that at second base, where you're going to get a lot of power. So Anthony Rendon is definitely a possibility at third base, although if you draft him, you're most likely going to be playing him at third base or second base. Next up, at number 3, I have Nolan Arenado, and these might look like some pretty high projections for Arenado, but rest assured, these are actually pretty good projections for Nolan Arenado. 306 average, that's not a huge jump up from last year, and this is, I'm just going to say right here, this should be a non-injury plagued season for Arenado. Arenado missed almost a third of the season last year with an injury. I think it was something like an ankle or an elbow injury. He missed almost a third of the season. So if he had finished that last third of the season, I firmly believe that Nolan Arenado would hit over 300 and definitely would have hit 28 home runs. He finished the season with about 18 home runs, I believe, and that's only playing about 2/3 of the season. And when you factor in that he plays at Coors Field, 28 home runs doesn't really seem that unattainable for him. So for a guy who can hit over 300 and hit nearly 30 home runs, he could easily be the number 1 player on my fantasy rankings. However, he does come with that little bit of risk that he may not achieve his potential, and playing in Coors, there seems to be some sort of injury risk while playing in Coors. We've seen it with Troy Tulowitzki and Carlos Gonzalez, so I'm not really going to project him. I'm going to project him as I think he should be projected, but I'm not going to rank him as that. I'm going to rank him adjusting for risk. So 80 RBI, 80 runs, easily attainable. That really is dependent on if Cargo and Tulo play. Otherwise, those RBIs and runs could definitely go up. Only 4 stolen bases. He's not a guy that steals a lot of bases. So number 4, Kyle Seager, not a guy that a lot of people are talking about this year for fantasy baseball, but Kyle Seager is a guy who is definitely a 30-homer threat. He had 20 in 2013, 25 last year. He could definitely hit 30 home runs this year, and for a guy playing in Safeco, that's insane. But he can do it. His power numbers just keep increasing from year to year, so Kyle Seager, entering his age 26 or 27 season, that's when players really start to develop the most power, so 31 home runs is kind of easily attainable for him, in my opinion. Then we move on to his RBI total. 100 RBIs is decent, 65 runs scored because he hits a little bit further down in that order, and 8 stolen bases. Those are easy projections for him. Now, Kris Bryant. People may knock me for these projections for Kris Bryant, but they're things that he can definitely hit. I see a lot of sites saying that Kris Bryant is going to be a 240 hitter his first year in the majors, and he's not really going to be extremely productive like everyone thinks he is. I would like to highly disagree with that statement. Kris Bryant is a guy that in every single minor league level except AAA hit 300, and in AAA he hit 295. So Kris Bryant isn't going to be a 240 hitter. He's not going to go from like a 320 average in the minors to a 240 hitter. That just doesn't translate correctly in my own personal opinion. I think Kris Bryant could easily be a 266 hitter. He's a guy that can adjust. He's a guy that does strike out a decent amount, but he can make adjustments. Kris Bryant flew through the minor leagues, and that's not a fluke. The fact that he was able to adjust to new levels of pitching so much, he went from... I think he started in Double-A last season. I'm not sure. He may have started before Double-A. But even if you consider 2013, his rookie campaign, he started in rookie ball and made it all the way to Double-A in his first season. He can adjust to hit, he can adjust to pitchers, and he can hit well. Now, 41 home run projection for Kris Bryant. That's not too insane to project either, in my own personal opinion. He hit 43 home runs in 138 minor league games last season, and the average major league season is 162 games. So saying that he misses maybe 24 games, they keep him down for 24 games, which isn't that likely. He'll probably only be down for about 14 to 20. So let's say he misses 24 games. That's 43 home run pace that he was on last year for 138 games. So for 162 games, which he's not going to play, he could hit a lot more than that. But 41 home runs in the majors is something that he can easily attain. And along with that are RBIs and runs. If he's in the majors long enough, those are going to be there. Now, something that not a lot of people talk about with Kris Bryant is his speed potential. He stole 15 games in the minor leagues last year. Or he stole 15 bases in the minor leagues last year. That's a stat that not a lot of people are pointing out for Kris Bryant, is he could be a sleeper speed potential guy. He's not going to be Billy Hamilton, he's not going to be D. Gordon, but he could be this year's Todd Frazier. He could steal 20 bases and hit 30 home runs. That's a definite possibility, and at third base, he could be an insanely good piece for you. However, I have him ranked at number 5 because he does come with a certain amount of risk. He may not come up those first 2 weeks of the season, he may not be up for the first half of the season. It all depends on when Kris Bryant comes up. That is completely directly correlated to his value. So then we go number 6, Adrian Beltre. He's always been considered Mr. Safety by many fantasy players, but the power numbers came down last year, and you could probably attribute that to injury, age. I'm going to attribute it to age. He's getting older. I expect that average to take a little bit of a dip. I expect the power numbers to not come back up. Adrian Beltre is going to be 36. Not a lot of 36-year-olds have a ton of success in the major leagues anymore, and I just feel like Adrian Beltre is on the decline of his career, but at number 6, third baseman, he's definitely a very, very safe pick. Then we go to Manny Machado at number 7. So Machado, you shouldn't be worried about the injuries anymore. He tore the same ligament in both knees, and it was discovered that the injury, the ligament, is actually hereditarily small in his family. It is hereditarily weakened, so he has both knees fixed. He shouldn't have any more knee problems. So 289, he was definitely trending up in batting average last year. 26 home runs is a decent projection because he is getting older. He's starting to develop more power. 10 stolen bases shouldn't be any problem. His knees aren't going to give him any trouble anymore. And 80 runs, 80 RBIs, that's easily attainable for him. Now at number 8, Todd Frazier. And you may be asking me, why do I have a guy that can go 20-20 at third base ranked number 8? Because Todd Frazier comes with a certain amount of risk. I don't ever really remember hearing about this great prospect Todd Frazier like we're all hearing about this great prospect Kris Bryant, or like we all heard about Anthony Rendon a couple years ago. Todd Frazier is a guy that came almost out of nowhere and had a 2020 season. So, while I believe that he could come back to 2020 form, there's definitely a huge risk there for Todd Frazier. I don't know if he's actually that 2020 guy, or if it's just because other things happen, but he can return to 2020 form, I think. The counting stats, the RBIs, and the runs are definitely going to be a lot higher than they were in 2014, simply because Jay Bruce and Joey Votto should be healthy, so that helps him out in terms of driving guys in and getting driven in. Now at number 9, I have the new Red Sox third baseman Pablo Sandoval, projected for 281, 18 home runs, 70 RBI, 1 stolen base, and 70 runs. So he's not a guy that he's just going to go to Fenway and have his career completely revitalized in terms of power. That's not the kind of hitter that Pablo Sandoval is. And we have to accept that at this point in his career, that he's not a huge power guy. He is a huge guy, but he's not a huge power guy. He's going to hit for average, not really power though. But at number 9, he's a pretty good bargain. Then we go to number 10, and this is where it really starts to get into the risky picks. We have Ryan Zimmerman ranked at number 10. He didn't even play 70 games last year, but you might be able to feel confident in him this year, considering he's playing first base and not third base, so there's significantly less injury risk for him. He should be getting more consistent playing time, and that 286 average, 24 home runs, 105 RBIs are definitely easily attainable for Ryan Zimmerman, especially entering his age 29 or 30 season, when that power really should start to get there. Now we go to Chris Davis, who is probably one of the riskiest guys on this third base projection. You may say, so I've got him projected for 30 home runs, and I've got a guy like Kyle Seager projected for almost the same stats as I do Chris Davis. 274 average is exactly the same, 31 home runs to 30 home runs. Why am I so much higher on Kyle Seager? Because Kyle Seager's trending up. Chris Davis isn't exactly trending up. He had a $169 last year, and while that could be contributed to the fact that he didn't have his Adderall last year, who knows if Adderall is the real reason why he didn't hit a ton of bombs last year and hit for 160-something average, hit well below the Mendoza line. Who knows if he's still a 274 hitter? So there's just so many question marks with Chris Davis at this spot that I don't know. I much prefer Kyle Seager because he's been consistent the last few years. He's been consistently improving, and I feel much more comfortable that Kyle Seager could hit 30 home runs than Chris Davis. I feel more confident that Nolan Arenado could hit 30 home runs than Chris Davis, and that's kind of saying something. Then we move to Carlos Santana, who I have projected for a 252 average, 24 home runs, 90 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, and 70 runs. This is the exact same as my first base projections. I kind of wanted to bump him up a little bit for this, maybe like a 260-something average, but I decided to keep it the same. He's a guy that could definitely outperform these rankings. I only have him ranked like this, but because he underperformed last year, and he was also injured last year, so that's something you have to factor into the home run total. He hit 30-something home runs while he missed a good portion of the season due to injury. So Carlos Santana could easily have a huge power season. He could easily be like top 5 value at third base. So Carlos Santana is definitely going to be a guy you want to consider taking as maybe a or a corner infielder, maybe like a backup third baseman later in the draft, maybe a utility player, DH something. Carlos Santana is a guy with huge potential late in the draft, and actually now that I think about it, not a ton of risk. Now we go to Matt Carpenter, who, while he doesn't come with a ton of risk, he's not the most consistent player, and he's not the most useful for fantasy. So he hits 288, that's decent. 14 home runs, 62 RBIs, 7 stolen bases, 110 runs. I fully expect that the runs will come up this year. The Cardinals were just awful in terms of runners in scoring position last year, and I know that in 2013 they hit an insane like 350-something, but they hit a ton worse last year. It was like maybe 250, 240. I don't remember the exact stat, but they were bad with runners in scoring position. So Matt Carpenter is a guy that can definitely bring that average back up. In the postseason, he started hitting for a little bit more power, and he started telling the media, you know what, I'm going to try to hit for a little bit more power, not worry about striking out and walking. I'm just going to try to hit for power. So Matt Carpenter is a guy that could definitely see a slight increase in power numbers this year, although I don't expect anything crazy from Matt Carpenter. Now we go to Now we go to Josh Harrison, who comes with a huge amount of risk at the 14 spot. So never before had Josh Harrison hit above 250. He hit 300 last year, and I don't believe that he's going to do that. I think he's going to hit somewhere in the middle, 274, 8 home runs, 70 RBIs, 16 stolen bases, 45 runs, and this all depends on playing time. He may not have a job at some point during the season. It all depends on how well other people perform. But Josh Harrison is an interesting one. I'm not going to target him in any of my drafts because he's a guy that's just going to go way too early in drafts this year because of how he performed last year. He was 9th in MVP voting last year, and he's not really that great a player. His BABIP was 100 points higher last year than it had been his entire career. Just think about that. So that 300 average that he had last year, I fully do not expect him to just repeat that. Not at all. So we go to Evan Longoria, a guy that has really dropped in my rankings as compared to a lot of other people. So I was actually doing a lot of research last year thinking about taking a keeper. And Evan Longoria is a guy who for the last, I don't know, like 6 seasons, all the power numbers have just kind of been decreasing. All the peripherals, the home runs per at-bats, the ISO. It's just not looking good for Evan Longoria. It looks like he's on the downward trend of his career. He's starting to strike out a lot more because pitchers are really starting to figure out how to pitch to Evan Longoria, and they don't have to worry about walking him or anything because there's no other threats on that Tampa Bay team really at this moment. So 75 RBIs, 75 runs, I think that's a decent projection for him. There's not really a ton of weapons for him to work with in the lineup. Now we go to Pedro Alvarez, who, you know what, I think Pedro Alvarez should probably be below David Wright, but just the home run potential makes him a little bit better than David Wright to me. So Pedro Alvarez is a guy who's going to hit for a horrible average, could hit for a decent amount of power, didn't really hit for a ton of power last year. He's not going to be any good in RBIs, not going to be any good in runs, not going to be any good in stolen bases. He's a guy that you really kind of want to avoid. Then we go to David Wright, America's third baseman, really. He's on the downward slide of his career also, but 10 home run, 10 stolen base season could still be attainable for David Wright. Well, he hits just a hair under 300, so I think he could do that. And then we go to Alex Rodriguez, my favorite sleeper pick. As you can see, I'm pretty high on him projections here. I project him to hit 486 with 82 home runs, 215 RBIs, 15 stolen bases, and 180 runs. I think Alex Rodriguez could easily hit all these, but you know, I have him ranked at 18 because that comes with a huge amount of risk, because Alex Rodriguez might not even play in the majors this year, guys. He might get sent down to the minors, but if you're looking for like a very last round of the draft pick that could have a decent potential, try Alex Rodriguez. He's not going to hit for these, so what I really project him for is probably like a 178 average, probably like 15 to 22 home runs, probably like 64 RBIs depending on where he hits in the lineup, maybe a stolen base, and then runs, probably about like 70 runs. It's all going to depend on A-Rod, where he plays in the lineup and how often he plays. But those are my third base rankings, guys. Leave a comment down below letting me know what you guys thought of them. If you want to disagree with my rankings, if you think I projected someone incorrectly, please let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you did enjoy. And if you guys want to be a part of my fantasy baseball league with fans, it's going to be a 12-team roto. Leave me a comment down below and PM me an email address where I can send you the league invite. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy it, don't forget, as I said, to leave a like rating. And I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'm going to see you guys later.